Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, Marine Corps veteran and host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and our dedicated staff at the Texas Veterans Land Board. Here every Monday on the Next Gen Warrior Show, we are proud to promote the continued leadership and service of veterans in their community and around the nation. Joining me today is retired Navy Vice Admiral Raquel C. Bono. Most recently, actually as of last year almost to the date, she was the head of Washington State's COVID-19 healthcare response team. And prior to that, she served as the chief executive officer and the director for the Defense Health Agency. Admiral, it's great to have you on the program today. How are you?
Well, thank you. Thanks, Dan, for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. And I know just kind of reading some of the work that you did in the state of Washington after your lifetime of service in the United States military is really incredible. But before we get into where you were a year ago and what you were doing and what you were seeing in terms of the spread of COVID-19, can you talk to us about, one, what is the Defense Health Agency for those who may be wondering? And also, what did you do during that time? What were some of the initiatives that you put in place there at DHA?
Great. Yeah, you know, that somebody I'd worked with had once described the Defense Health Agency as the biggest medical organization that you'd never heard of. We were huge. We are huge. And what I did as the CEO of the Defense Health Agency is I, under congressional direction, helped bring Army medicine, Navy medicine, and Air Force medicine together. And I understand that you were in the Marines. You were part of that Navy medicine group that we were taking care of. And Congress and actually the leadership of the military health system recognized that if we could bring many of our like services together across all the services, we would not only have more efficiency in terms of cost savings, but we also learned that we could learn from each other and actually apply best practices to that. And the reason this was so important was that another part of my portfolio was actually overseeing the entire TRICARE health plan. And so I'm sure many people, many military people and family members and retirees recognize TRICARE. So part of my responsibility was making sure that we designed the TRICARE health plan to be as responsive to what our beneficiaries needed, and that we would complement the care that people got in the military treatment facilities, the hospitals, the military hospitals that we have across the country and across the globe. So it was a rather large portfolio, but it was something that it was very exciting because of the opportunity to make really meaningful change.
So one thing that I didn't add at the top of the show there, that you were the first woman surgeon in the military to hold the rank of Vice Admiral. And I want to ask you for a minute if you can reflect on the beginning of your military service. And I love to ask our guests about trajectory and the path that their life or their military service or their life after the service looks like. So when you hear that incredible mark that you achieved in your military career, how, probably the word I shouldn't use is predictable, but were you kind of like looking to pursue something like that, a leadership role in the military when you were studying medicine in college?
No. I mean, my whole entry into the military was really kind of, when I look back on it, I'm a lot embarrassed at how short-sighted I was because I didn't know very much when I first came into the military. I should have. I mean, my grandfather served with the U.S. Army as up to the rank of colonel during the occupation in the Philippines. My father had retired from the military as a captain in the Navy. My brother had gone to the Naval Academy, and he also retired as an admiral. For a while there, we were the only brother-sister on active duty serving as flags together.
That's incredible. Can I stop you there real quick?
Yeah.
How long were y'all in the service together at that same rank? Like, what was that like?
So we were flags together about 2.5, 3 years.
Wow.
And he though he's younger than me, he got to flag before I did. But I do have to tell everybody, I ended up retiring, outranking him. So I'm just
That's good. You got to hold him over. You got to hold that over his head for family dinners and, you know, Thanksgiving and everything.
Exactly. So it was really kind of cool, though. He was in the operational setting, and I was in the medical setting, and yet there was so much commonality. We shared so much during that time. So I never anticipated that, and I never planned to become flag. As a matter of fact, I didn't have a clue how that happened when I first came in. And when I first came in, you know, I accepted a scholarship from the military, from the Navy, to go to medical school. And so part of my payback for that scholarship was to serve year for year for the number of years that they put me through school, which was 4 years. But, you know, Dan, when I got into the military, I started out thinking in terms of how much longer do I have to pay back, to realizing that it wasn't so much that I had to pay back. Right. I was given the privilege. I got to serve. I mean, and that was a shift that happened to me. And I kept on signing up for another extension because I was having so much fun and I was learning so much. And it really became more of a privilege rather than, you know, an obligation.
So if you hadn't gone into, let's kind of maybe, if you can for a minute, if you can put a pause on joining the military, or if you can put a pause on the medical side of it, right? Mm-hmm. If you didn't go to medical school, what were some other interests that you had? You talked about at the beginning of your career, you know, you can't see that horizon. You cannot see that trajectory, right? So you had to be considering other opportunities, other interests. What were some of those, and how did you balance them against your desire or inevitable service in the Navy?
Yeah. You know, this is what I observed once when I really started paying attention to what was going on in the Navy and what was happening to me. And that was, I was learning how to, without realizing it, the Navy was starting to instill in me some real leadership lessons, you know, paying attention to how you related to other people and how you would eventually help create conditions for other people to succeed, you know, and how you would help the group as a whole succeed in a shared goal. And that was something that I had not really thought about. I mean, it wasn't something that I'd gone into or joined the military with the objective that I would learn how to become a better leader. It was something that became instilled in me almost from the start. And without realizing it, I was starting to say to myself, you know, here's a better way of doing things, or I like modeling myself after this person who's in the military because I like the way they're getting things done and they're maintaining relationships with everybody else. So it was a shock to realize that I was starting to get these assignments where I was being put in leadership positions. Yeah. And at first I'd like go, are you really me? Are you sure about this? and then I'd realize nothing, you know, people were always there to help mentor me through. And not only did I have really good mentorship going through, but it turns out that I'd learned a lot on the way on how to do things. And so it was something that, again, caught me by surprise.
So Admiral, let me ask you this, kind of going through the thought process of joining the service and then the experience of having to go from, as you said, kind of the tactical side to the strategic side. Yeah. I want to jump all the way forward to March of 2020, which is, to me, maybe people have different perceptions of this, but it's certainly a month that I don't think I will ever forget. Maybe not in the same way as 9/11, where everybody was watching it unfold, but I certainly remember, and again, this is not to compare the two. I certainly remember, coming home from work and then being told that we wouldn't be returning to an in-office setting. I'm an avid sports fan, so the day the NBA went dark, when Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, had the teams walk off I think in Dallas, actually, the Mavericks were playing. Those are things that will certainly stick in my memory as this, cataclysmic event kind of rolled its way around the globe, made its way into America. And you, if I understand this correctly, had recently retired from
Yeah.
the Navy. And so, one, can you tell us about what, for somebody who had dedicated their lives to medicine, to no longer be either a strategic advisor, to be running DHA, or, as you said earlier, to be on those front lines? Did you see this kind of making your way over? And then did you think, how do I get back into the fight somehow? And then if you don't mind me also asking, what was that call that
Yeah.
you got from the state of Washington that said, hey, we do need you to jump back into the fight?
Yeah. So, yeah, March stands out as, as a real headline for me. And by this time, I had retired. I was now about 5 months, 5.5 months retired. My husband bet me that I wouldn't remain 1 month retired because, and he knows me pretty well.
Yeah.
So I was feeling pretty proud of myself that I got to 5.5 months. But I'll tell you something, Dan. One of the things that was happening was that I was watching this pandemic evolve. We hadn't called it a pandemic yet. They were just getting ready to call it a pandemic. But I was watching to see how there was this novel coronavirus that was making its way from overseas. And I thought it's just a matter of time before it hits the United States. And part of the reason I was so convinced was that when I was in the military, one of my first jobs, my first flag job was as the PACOM surgeon. I was with a combatant command. And so this was a 4-star command, and they were overseeing the entire Indo-Asia Pacific area. One of my jobs as a PACOM surgeon was to actually run tabletops, war games, where we looked at what would we do, what would we need to do if there was ever a pandemic. And so when I was watching this actually happen in real time, there was a part of me thinking, boy, I would love to be in the fight. I mean, I know what to do. I know what we practiced in the tabletops, in the war games. But at the same time, I was going, boy, I sure am glad I'm no longer in uniform, because I know how big a lift this will end up being. So as I was watching it with this kind of mixed emotions, I get this call from Washington State. And it was a friend of a friend of a friend who knew me, and asked, would I be able to help them with the state of Washington and their response? Because at this point, they were starting to receive that, they were getting that surge of positive cases. The nursing homes were seeing so many of their residents having to be hospitalized, and many people were starting to die. And I said, of course, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the equivalent of the gunfire for us in the medical field, So I thought this was such a compelling request. And they said, well, would you at least be willing to talk to the governor? And I thought, sure. I mean, why wouldn't I want to talk to the governor? But I really thought it was going to be somebody in his office. The next call I got was from Governor Inslee. And he says, he goes, Admiral, doctor, I could use your help. I said, well, how can I help? Or how do you envision me helping? And he says, he explained that they were getting overrun, and he needed some assistance with getting their healthcare system to respond in a collective, in a synchronized way. And so I asked him, this was on a Saturday morning. I said, when would you like me there? And he says, well, last week would have been best. Wow. So the following Sunday afternoon, this was Saturday morning, that next day in the afternoon, I was on a plane, which was very strange because there were like the airports that started closing down and the flights. But that Monday morning, I was in his office, and we were looking to see what did we need to do to help make sure Washington State could successfully navigate this and really make sure that the greatest number of Washingtonians would be saved and be kept safe.
Can you, or even are you able to provide a sense of how massive that the resource and the resources and the logistics that had to be mobilized were?
Oh yeah, well, we're talking about a state that has nearly 8 million people, and they have 39 counties. And the reason I say that is that each of these counties had their own kind of separate type of public health system, and they each had their own kind of hospital system. So coordinating all that, meant that being able to cover the state in all 39 counties and really help drive home the message that Governor Inslee was trying to make in terms of keeping as many Washingtonians safe, while that in and of itself was massive, I was able to use the things that I had learned in my military career to bring to bear. How do you create that alignment across so many different people? And I'm sure many of us in the military recognize that part of the reason we all served is that we believed in the ultimate mission of service to country. And so just the number of resources and the number of sectors, I'm bringing them all together and helping everyone realize that we're in this together, and our ultimate goal is to keep as many Washingtonians safe. That was a message, and that was an ideal that everyone could get behind really easily. And it was best expressed by the commitment and the sincerity of Governor Inslee. So, I mean, he prepped the battlefield so much better for me than he even imagines.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, is how long does it take to get a sense of how wide the scope is that you are kind of undertaking there? I mean, this must have been, it's not something that you just, roll up in and you're ready to go. It takes time to understand. Yeah. You talked about the key players, the different counties, people react differently to the situation, or maybe don't have the same sense of urgency on different sides of a city or a state or whatever it may be. So I guess you just jump into it head first and you get a sense, as you go.
It's a great question. And of course, we have a saying in the military that, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Right? So as much planning as we did, I think it's better to be prepared for anything is really. And so when I went in there, I had to find the group that was most invested and could help generate, who could generate the most momentum, right, and who were also the most influential, so they could help me message and carry the water and start making progress happen. And it was also important then, and this is no different than being in a large organization like the military, how important communication is. You can never over communicate anything. And the more you're able to share and the more transparent you are, the easier it is for people to understand what role they might be able to play in this collective effort.
In a situation like that, where I would guess that I would imagine that you're on almost 24 hours a day for months at a time, how did you maintain your own mental and emotional health through that and prevent burnout?
Great question, because you're absolutely right. Not only was it 24 hours a day, it was 7 days a week. I arrived there on a Monday and we were working into the weekends, late nights into the weekend. And, by this time when I had arrived there, the governor had put out an executive order where we were in lockdown. We had suspended all elective care in the hospital so that we could maintain the supply of PPE and make sure that we had enough testing equipment. And you know what I relied on more than anything was my daily PT, because that was something that I had learned in the military. I mean, we all had the physical readiness tests we had to do. I'll admit that the Navy's PRT was not nearly as rigorous as the Marines. So I will give you that.
That's something we take a lot of pride in.
I know, and you should. But the underpinning, that habit of paying attention to your health and making sure that you're doing some type of regular exercise had been so ingrained in me that was something that I did, that even in lockdown, I was doing the stairs in the stairwell of the hotel that they had me in, just so I could maintain some kind of cardio activity. And then also, being from the health background, and also because I had preached this many times to all the units that I worked with, was the importance of sleep and nutrition. And it's sometimes, the sleep and the nutrition sometimes go by the wayside, and so does exercise when we're kind of in the throes, in the midst of a fight. But that's the thing that'll help you, sustain and maintain your level of effectiveness. And then being able to have a very supportive family was also very important. So it took a lot of being able to maintain my PT regimen as much as I could.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the family aspect, right? Because that's something that maybe has experienced such a
Yeah.
strain, whether it's, people being locked in close confines with their family, or the
Yeah.
opposite, which is not being able to see their loved ones. Were you able to communicate with your family during this time, and can you kind of talk to us about the importance of keeping those relationships up, even if at times it was just digital?
Yeah. I think, hitting on family is such an important aspect. And I can't stress to you enough that I always said, and when I was mentoring other folks, I always mentioned to them that, at some point your time in the military service will come to an end. And you want to be, for us in the Navy, we get, we get gonged off the, and you want your family waiting for you on the other side of the gangway, right? Because even when you leave the Navy, you're not going to be able to bring the Navy with you. It'll be one part of you always, but it won't be your constant companion like it is when you're on active duty. So maintaining relationships with my family, and I have 3 girls, they're all in their 20s. But maintaining that relationship and that closeness was something that was an imperative to me, even while I was on active duty. And that carried on into my post-military life. And so during the pandemic, because my daughters were in a lot of different areas, what my husband and I would do are these weekly Zoom calls. And it was great. I mean, fortunately, we all felt very comfortable talking to each other in the first place, but having these Zoom calls and being able to see each other's expressions and share the stories that we were independently going through did a lot to keep us connected. And I'm very grateful that we had that ability to do that.
Outside of the family connections and being able to maintain those relationships, what were some of the leadership lessons that you learned through this? And if I can ask, how much different was the pandemic from a leadership perspective, different than or maybe similar to your experiences during your military career?
So I am so grateful that Governor Inslee recognized that what he was really asking me for was leadership. I mean, he clearly wanted somebody who had deep knowledge of how complex healthcare systems work. And, that was something I could give him very easily. But I think that what I learned in Washington State was really just kind of emblematic or symbolic of all the things that I had learned while I was in the military. So being able to work in that type of ambiguous, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, environment was still something that I had to rely on in this post-military assignment. So, it was more an emphasis on what I'd learned and bringing it forward into this new battle.
What are you looking forward to after we get on the other side of this thing? I feel like we're getting close. Like, it's springtime. It's starting to warm up here in Texas. And thankfully, you are back here in the state of Texas. I know I didn't get to mention that, but we'll get to that here in a moment. And it feels like people are, the vaccine is rolling out. I think people are feeling just a little bit more confident about going out and seeing people or spending time with their friends outdoors. What are you looking forward to the most?
So it shouldn't come as a surprise to you, but the thing that I'm looking forward to the most is being able to spend time with my family in person. Both in terms of the family that I have with my husband, with my 3 daughters, but also the extended family, my parents, my nieces and nephews, my brothers and my brother and sisters. It's being able to do that. And I think that's more than anything is something that we all have realized that how much we value being able to have that connectedness with people.
Yeah. No, I certainly, I guess I sense the coming excitement, right, of being able to go out and see friends and see family, and maybe not have to think about it as hard. And I know we still may be a couple months away or several months away, but it certainly feels like there's a light at the end of the tunnel here, and it's definitely hopefully going to be a really good year. But what I want to ask you about as we move towards the end here is what you miss most about being in the Navy.
That's a great question. So, you know, um,
Where to
towards,
start, where to end, huh?
yeah,
I know it's a long one to answer, but
no, that's a good one though. It's a good one. It really is. And I think people will actually, it'll probably be something that other people will be able to, um, resonate with. I mean, I think it'll mean something to others as well. But the thing I miss the most is, and I didn't realize this, people who'd gone before me and told me that I would know when it would be time to leave, when it would be time to retire. They were right. There comes a certain point in your career and you realize, this has been a fantastic ride. I couldn't have asked for more, but it is time to let others, start taking the helm and taking it, forward, bringing the organization to the next level. And towards the end of my career, I was almost completely joint. So I was very accustomed to working across all the services, which I really, really valued. I think there's so much to be learned from each other. So people had said, those who had retired before me, that the thing that they missed the most was the people. And I thought, I totally get that, because you are with colleagues and close friends, and I totally understood that. But I realized that the people that I really want to maintain contact with, I could do that after I left the military. But I do recall the day of the inauguration, where I was reminded of what I missed the most about the military. And I'm sorry, this is it's a little emotional for me now to even share this.
Up a little bit, yeah. Once you start seeing it, it brings back the visceral reaction of being in the service.
Yes, and that was it. I saw the color guard. And I saw the color guard and they were joint. And I missed that sense of mission that we all had. And, knowing no matter what was happening in your day, the reason we were in uniform was to serve the country. And I missed knowing day in and day out, every time I'd go to an event and we would have the national anthem and we'd have colors paraded, it was always a reminder that we served a larger purpose, that we were wearing the cloth of our nation to serve others, the country, and we were the representatives of the U.S. And that was always so visible to me when I was on active duty. And that's what I missed the most.
No, it's really touching, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. And before we close out here, I want to say again, as I just said a minute ago, thank you for your lifetime of military service, and we're glad to have you back here in the great state of Texas. I hope you're enjoying, hopefully getting to spend some time with your friends and your family. Before we go, though, is there anything else that maybe we didn't get to hit on today, or something that you would like to leave our audience with?
So I appreciate that, because I think that you're right. We still have some work to do with this COVID pandemic. And, the vaccines are starting to be distributed. And what I'd like to remind people is that, if your chance to get a vaccine comes up, please take it. We really need to make sure that so many people remain as safe as possible. Because Texas does have a very rich history of, being really independent. And also we have a very strong military legacy here in the great state of Texas. And part of the military presence in Texas has always been as leading from the front. So for those that are watching, if you get a chance to have your vaccine, please take it and make sure that others around you stay safe, because this will be the only way that we can really get to the other side of the pandemic.
Yeah. No, I certainly appreciate that. And I want to thank you for coming on the program today and talking with us about your military service, as well as the response to COVID-19. It's been a very eye-opening conversation. And thank you for also, what we talk about on the show so much is continued leadership and continued service after you take off the uniform. Go find a way that you can support, whether that's through healthcare or mental health, physical health, your neighbors and your friends and your family. And you certainly have been a tremendous example of that. And I appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Dan. It's been my pleasure, really. Thank you.
On behalf of Chairman George B. Bush and our dedicated staff here at the Texas Veterans Land Board, my name is Dan Hamilton. You can check out Next Gen Warrior on your favorite podcast platform by typing in Voices of Veterans. You can also type in Voices of Veterans on your favorite social media platform to keep up with conversations such as this. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here next Monday.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.